And so here's the Omen 16 right here. Let's go ahead and just turn this around real quick so you can get an idea of the box. And this is what was shipped. It was shipped in this as the external box, which honestly is not as much packaging as I would usually like. I definitely would prefer more packaging if possible. And it did have like this holding the laptop in place. I don't know. And the laptop was wrapped in plastic and then wrapped in cloth. I just think the packaging could definitely be improved in terms of safety for packaging. The Omen 16 power adapters right here. It's a pretty decent sized power adapter for 230 watts. There you go. So if you want to look at the details on that, if you want to order a second one, only about 4 feet long for the main power cable, maybe even three and a half feet long. Not a very long power cable. Power adapters cable is like 6 feet long. So you get a total reach of around 10 feet, which is not bad, but obviously I would prefer it if this cable was a couple feet longer. Now we got this nice cloth fabric wrapped around the laptop itself. Omen logo right there on the top. This is shiny, metallic, silvery looking. We've got a plastic top. You can see the entire rear of the laptop is exhaust, though this part, at least it looks like exhaust, but you can see this part is actually not used for anything. Not actually exhaust. It's like blocked off. So the actual exhaust comes out here and here. I'm not too worried about that in this, I guess, chassis wattage range, because a 4050 doesn't need more than 100 watts of power, so I think it will still be all right. Along the right side, you can see there's no fan exhaust. Along the left side, we do have another fan exhaust. So you get 3 fan exhausts coming out of this laptop. Here is the Predator Helios Neo 16. They've got to change the name. The naming is terrible. It should be just Acer Neo 16. That would be great. Maybe Predator Neo 16, but why does there need to be Helios Neo 16? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. You can see Predator Helios Neo 16. Why does it have to be 3 words long? I have no idea. We got the Predator logo here on the box. The back side is blank, pretty much empty. There is a carry handle here. Let's go ahead and open the power adapter box to start with. So here's the power adapter box. There's the laptop, power adapter, shabam. 230 watt power adapter. Check that out after the fact, can pause it and read it. All right, and let's go ahead and grab the laptop, which you can see is inside of this rubber, or not rubber, but like styrofoam encasement. Quite a lot of papers that are just kind of loosely put into the box, which is kind of, thank you for joining the Predator team. As a member of this elite group, you'll enjoy the benefits of premium service for your Predator product for 1 year, limited warranty, 24/7 access to dedicated support team. Number is right here. The dedicated support, or goacer.com/predatorchat. Planet9.gg. Looks like there's a bunch of stickers here that are individually peelable. There is an international traveler's warranty. There we go. Predator Helios Neo 16. Quick setup guide. Your Predator notebook tour. Not seeing anything too special here. The USBs are 3.2 Gen 2. 2 of them, but one of them is Gen 1. Here's the laptop enclosure, and I do think this will protect the laptop pretty well. A nice, like, kind of felt wrapping around the outside of the laptop. And you can see we've got a metal top lid. It's quite a thick system. And just reviewing the ports real quick, headset adapter port here on the left. So there's a combo, fan exhaust, USB-A, and it looks like this is a power type. So like you can power something while the laptop's asleep. At least it has a little power symbol next to it. Ethernet port. Along the right side, we've got our power adapter port and HDMI. And then we have 2 USB-As, and then we have a USB-C that I believe is also a Thunderbolt 4. Yeah, HDMI 2.1. 3 USB-A 3.2s and 1 USB-C 3.2. Now we got 2 USB-As right here on the right side. Unfortunately, these USB-As are on the right side. I kind of prefer the USB-As mainly to be on the left side, just because if you plug in a mouse, you know, you're gonna have that cable right in front of you, or any peripherals really, if you're right-handed. We got a Kensington lock port and a fan exhaust on the right side. On the rear, we have a power adapter port, HDMI 2.1, 2 Thunderbolt 4s, which is nice to see, and 2 more fan exhausts. Another fan exhaust over here on the right side, an Ethernet port that you have to pull down, and it looks like it's on the downward facing, which means you might have to lift the laptop to get this out, which is a little bit of a bummer. Then we got another USB-A, and then a micro SD card slot and a headset port. Now on the front, there are no ports, but that gives you an idea of the laptop thickness and size. So for design, we've got a 16 here. We got a nice white backlit keyboard, which I do love that. The touchpad, pretty sure this is a plastic touchpad. It feels plastic. It does feel pretty good though, like in terms of stability. It doesn't feel cheap to click, but I will say that it does not feel super premium because it's not glass. So the keyboard layout is pretty unique. HP, I think, is the only laptop manufacturer right now, at least in the gaming laptop space, where you get this style of a layout, where you get the arrow keys off to the side. The keyboard itself is not centered up. It's actually a little to the left of the touchpad, a little left of center, which some people will love that. Some people will hate that because it does impact how you lay your hands on the keyboard itself. So it's a pretty quiet overall keyboard, and it has a nice shunk to the keys. And I gotta say, the backlight of the keyboard itself is very clean. And this looks super bright. Even in this kind of studio lighting, we can easily see the backlight on this. But as far as I know, this is not a multicolor. It's a white only backlight, and it does time out after about 30 seconds or so of not touching the keyboard. It will disappear. Obviously, this is not a keyboard layout that includes a number pad. So that is probably one of the biggest cons of the keyboard itself. It's also not a mechanical keyboard, so you're not gonna get the same type of like tactile feedback, kind of loud typing experience. It's got a very shunk feel to it. Caps lock has a little key light. F5 key, which is the mute button, also has a little key light on it. So you can see the caps lock here has a little light. And then the F5 button, you have to press FN to press it, but you can see it does kind of glow orange when it's muted. So when the volume is down. Display monitor function over here for F1. We've got display brightness up and down for F2 and 3. We've got keyboard backlight brightness on F4, volume mute, volume down, volume up for F5 through 7, rewind, pause, fast forward for F8 through 10, disable touchpad, Windows lock, power button, and delete for our last buttons over there. Then over here on the right, we've got an Omen button, a calculator hotkey, print screen, insert, home, and page up, page down, and pause, which is interesting because I would have rather them put the delete key probably here where it would normally be on a traditional laptop, and then put the pause up here where the delete is there. I don't know. It's a little different because this is more like the classic keyboard, big keyboard, like desk keyboard style layout, with the exception of the pause and delete key being flipped. And then of course the arrow keys also are separated off very nicely, which you can see the touchpad is a large touchpad. It's not a small touchpad, but it's not glass. Like I said, and the click feels okay. Not super premium on the click, but it'll work just fine. And in terms of functionality, it's just not gonna glide as smoothly as a glass touchpad. You lose a little bit of the premium feel because it is plastic. In terms of typing on this, I think most people are gonna enjoy the typing experience on this, no problem. Backlight is great. It's just not very RGBified or gamery. I'm gonna go ahead and feel each of the keys just to make sure nothing, I don't get any weird clickiness or a key that is like coming off or something. All of this feels good. That is quite a loud startup sound right there. Wow. Notice that the arrow keys have this kind of translucent texture around them. This power key has a translucent texture kind of around it. And WASD keys have this same translucence. So certain keys are gonna light up a bit more with the RGB. Feels like a plastic touchpad. I'm pretty sure it's a plastic touchpad, which means that it's really not as high quality of a touchpad as I would really love. It doesn't feel bad, but it does not feel very premium. That's a little bit disappointing, especially considering the price point of $1,200. This is a membrane plasticky keyboard. It feels just fine to type on, especially if you like membrane keyboards. I do overall like the layout. We got pretty close to a full-size number pad. We have pause, play, and power button over here on the top right. And then we also have our normal number pad functions. Right here is the Predator Sense button. So this is like launching Armory Crate if you press that. Everything is backlit here. All the F1 through 12 keys are backlit. I like that. And the keyboard backlight is pretty easy to see even in a fairly bright environment. You can see that the keyboard is quite vibrant and looks really good, I think, in terms of an overall RGB keyboard implementation. The keyboard feel overall, I give it like a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. It's got a nice layout, nice key feel, not super high premium or anything like that. The keyboard backlight, everything's illuminated at least. The touchpad though, I would only give it like a 6.5 or 7 out of 10. It's just because it's more of a plasticky feel, but it is a larger touchpad. The click does feel pretty good. A little bit mushy maybe. Let's see what we need. We need some small Phillips screwdrivers right now. Okay, so I ended up with PH000 for my Phillips head screwdriver. 7 of these screws, well, 6 of these screws are the same size, but the back 2 screws over here on these 2 corners, they are a different size. To put the longer screws back in the back corners. Otherwise, you may stick a screw all the way through your laptop, which would not be good. This is a little tricky. I'm not seeing any major gaps. There's no pop-up screw. I think I'm just gonna try going in the front middle. Fairly easy to take this laptop apart so far. Here is the inside of the laptop. You know, we got 2 big heat pipes going across that's shared across both of the fans. The fans are a good size, which is great to see. And this fan does have a dual exhaust. And then in addition, we have a 3rd heat pipe dedicated to just the GPU. And looks like that's gonna help basically ensure the GPU stays cooler. Most likely, I think these thermals are gonna be enough to keep this laptop at a reasonable place and giving us basically full performance of the machine, but we will see. 2 SODIMM slots, which means we have fully upgradable RAM. 8 gig, 1RX 16 PC5 5600. So we got super fast RAM in here, which is great to see. A lot of these budget laptops are only including PC5, DDR5 4800. I'm wondering if this can even run at 5600 with this i5 CPU. It might not be able to. We'll have to find out. It is just single-sided and 1RX 16, which means it's on the slower side as far as RAM goes, but at the same time, it is DDR5. We've got our Wi-Fi stick right here. So if you want to upgrade that, that's easy to access. So it's a Realtek Wi-Fi card, which is usually on the slower side as far as Wi-Fi memory cards or Wi-Fi cards go. So you can always upgrade that for 20 bucks. SSD right here. The cover right now is like attached to the SSD. See if we can get that off. There we go. All right. So here is our SSD, an SK Hynix brand. I believe it's a 512 gig. Yeah, 512 gig SK Hynix. I gotta say, I don't know if a double-sided SSD would fit inside of this. Probably not. So if you're upgrading your SSD, you might not be able to use this shroud. Yeah, I'm guessing if you're gonna keep this, if you're gonna use this shroud again, at least the bottom panel, you probably won't be able to use the bottom panel if you use a double-sided SSD. That'd be my guess. It's a 70 watt-hour battery. So the battery itself could be bigger, but for a budget system, that's a pretty decent size. I wish this had a second SSD slot, and I wish it had a better Intel Wi-Fi card. Overall, the layout is nice, and I do love that you can upgrade both of the RAM sticks quite easily. Thermally speaking, this is definitely not an overkill system. The speakers are Bang & Olufsen, and there are downward firing 1 and 2 on the left and right sides. You can see them right there. All you need to take this apart is a Phillips head screwdriver, but a smaller size Phillips head. Kind of looks like this whole back end comes up and out. Let's try to get this up. I'm gonna start with the back end. Oh wow, just using my thumb, got it started. Looks like we need to take this bottom thing off. It's kind of snapping up there. There we go. So that's kind of like the hinge cover. So you probably gotta take that off first before you can take the chassis off. Okay, we're gonna try doing all the way around this other side because the LAN port there kind of makes it hard to get it to come up. There we go, we got it off finally. That took a little while, definitely in the overall spectrum of things, a little bit on the harder side to disassemble. Shabam! So there's the internals. The internals are looking quite promising. So the battery pack right here is a 90 watt hour. So very close to the peak. 99 is the limit. We've got our killer 1650i Wi-Fi module here. We have our SSD. Yeah, I don't see a second M.2 slot, which is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping there would be a second one. Anyway, we have our 2 SODIMM slots right here and right here. And they're all wrapped in this kind of a black shrouding here, so I can't really see what exact models. So if you're going to want to upgrade this SSD drive, you're going to need to do a swap and replace, maybe like a clone and copy and replace if you want to use a new SSD for an upgrade. We've got a dedicated heat pipe. I believe this is going to be the GPU over here on the left and the CPU over here on the right. We've got a dedicated heat pipe to just the GPU, another dedicated heat pipe to just the GPU. And then we have 2 shared heat pipes between the CPU and the GPU. That's going to allow both fans to effectively cool either the CPU or the GPU when it's primarily a GPU only load or primarily a CPU only load. I really like that. Then I gotta say these fans as well are quite large and they should blow a lot of air, which is obviously the goal of some fans here. Now we have a dedicated CPU heat pipe as well as these metal plates that are going to go over the VRMs for the system. Now, if you're going to take this all apart and off, you're going to have to take this whole assembly off and undo all of these screws. It's going to be, looks like not too bad if you wanted to do it, but also not necessarily an easy repaste job if you wanted to do that. Now, this does come with liquid metal, according to Acer's website. So it will be very interesting to see how well the cooling solution works. You know, it's only got an i5 processor in here. I feel like the cooling solution that we have here is almost overkill, almost. I just wish there was another M.2 slot. I think that'd probably be my primary gripe. We do have our big speakers right here and right here. They don't look like super high quality speakers, but they are on the larger side overall with a bit of subwoofer built on them, it looks like. So for upgradability, I would give it a pretty good score, except the main downside is taking the bottom off. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So the extra M.2 slot is kind of hidden underneath this shroud right here. And it extends over here to the right. So if you want to put in another SSD, it's right here. So that's good. It's nice that it has that. Because I was afraid that it does not, but it does. So there's a lot of ventilation here for fan intakes. This is a plastic bottom. I got to say that overall, there's not much height elevation for air going into the system underneath. That might be a problem. You might want to get something to raise up the back of this laptop. All right, so screen. That seems pretty solid, but not like amazing rigidity. Like I'm picking up the laptop when I move it left and right. Like you can see it, I'm like literally picking up the laptop. So that's a lot of force on the laptop itself. The hinge can go all the way back and lay flat. So that's 100% of the way back. And it does have a slight wobble when you let it go. It does feel pretty stiff when you move it through the primary range right here. You can bounce it a little bit, but you know, you can pretty much do that to any laptop, even the Blade 18 here, you can see. It's hard to know if it's gonna be a perfect in terms of long-term reliability. I'm guessing as long as the application for the glue and the screws and everything were done correctly, it should be all right. The plastic keyboard deck definitely has some flex here, right? I'm pushing gently right here. If I push hard, it does have some flex there. I think, you know, under normal circumstances, it's going to flex a little bit under your wrist here. This middle area is going to flex a pretty decent amount. The touchpad obviously is going to be, you know, you click it in and there's less flex over here on the left side, which is nice to see. I would say this is certainly above average amount of flex, which I don't love. I don't love that. I'm definitely above average. Wish this was more rigid. There probably needs to be another support here from the chassis design perspective. The keyboard itself is about average in terms of flex, not like amazing, not terrible. Very rigid along the top, lots of support along the top there. It's primarily right here on the right hand wrist rest where I would say the flexibility is a little bit more than I would say is ideal and recommended. So starting in the bottom right, very solid, good feel. A bit of flex up here in the middle. Almost all laptops have a good amount of flex here. No flex here. Very little flex in the front middle. Going along the sides, a little bit of flex over here. a fair bit of flex in the back middle, almost no flex over here. Right middle, very solid. So middle of the keyboard, quite a bit of flex. A bit more flex, I would say, than average, which is a little disappointing, but I guess that's kind of what you got to deal with, I guess. The webcam actually has a physical shutter that you can use to cover the web camera. I really love that. That's so cool. Camera quality test next. I can see my beard hair pretty well. It's got a little bit of noise to it, but it's actually pretty dang good detail. Overall, I think the webcam is above average for a gaming laptop camera, and it looks a little bit reddish. As far as webcam quality goes, I give it probably like a 7 out of 10, 6.5, 7 out of 10. Slightly above average webcam. It's not awful. That's probably what I would say. That's the way I would describe it. Nice middle ground. It's not a super high-end camera for sure. So not great detail on the beard and the hair here. It'll work to get the job done on talking to your grandma and stuff like that. It's also not the most accurate colors, but the colors actually are looking a little better when I'm looking at the screen here than what is being shown in the camera. At least you got a webcam, right? That said, not an amazing webcam. It's all right. No Windows Hello either. Well, especially during the early bass, the bass was sound very clear and good. But then like once all the other sounds came in, it kind of got a bit more muddled. The mids and highs didn't sound as good there in the transition. And also the overall volume is not as loud as some of the more expensive laptops as well. So let's check out Faded Aeon Half-Life. Wow, those mids and highs actually sounded pretty decent. Better than honestly most other $900 laptops for sure. La 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 Love You Like by Deuce Williams. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la la. We hit, I saw like 86, 87 decibels on the decibel meter, which is pretty good amount of volume. I would say the speakers are probably right around like an 8 out of 10 overall. The key really, I think, is that once everything is really like going, like the full sound is going with the bass and the mids and the highs, that's when it kind of breaks down a little bit more. But when it's just the mids or it's just the highs or it's just the bass, it sounds really good. But it's really when it all comes together. And so certain sound environments, certain types of music won't sound as good with these speakers, I think. So DLSS X is your audio manipulator software. So if you want to change the speaker profiles, you've got automatic, music, voice, movies, RPG, strategy, shooter. That's interesting that there's 3 different ones for video games. There's also custom audio, bass boost, dialogue clarity, volume smoothing, treble enhance. Interesting. So that's custom audio. Let's try just the music. We're gonna place Peter Spacey Roar and listen to it real quick. Okay. Okay, we're gonna leave it to automatic. Some of that was just downright weird sounding, with audio going up and down in weird ways, without me even changing stuff. So we're gonna leave it to automatic and see how it all sounds. And I gotta say, I'm not that impressed with the initial impressions of the speakers. It does not sound very good. The bass, the clarity, it all sounds a bit muddled. It's not that loud of volume. It's several decibels lower than what some of the other laptops have done. Okay, so not terrible mid clarity and high clarity, but the volume wasn't very loud. Okay, so these speakers are not particularly loud. The bass is pretty muddled and mediocre, and the mids and highs are not that clear, but at least with Faded A on Half-Life, it was decent-ish for when there was just mids going on. There you go. Speakers on this, I would give like 5.5 or 6 out of 10. Probably one of the worst speakers I've tested in a gaming laptop this year so far. Okay, so the important thing to keep in mind with my display checker tool, the Spider 5 Elite, this guy, underestimates color gamut by around like 7 to 8%. Whatever ratings we get here, you're gonna have to add another 7 to 8% to them. So it got 63% of sRGB, which brings us to about 70% sRGB total, 55% Adobe RGB, and 55% of the P3 color gamut. So 70% sRGB, not amazing, right? This is gonna be a budget-ish display. Whoa, our brightness, 324 nits. That's brighter than I thought it was gonna be. That's brighter than what HP advertises. HP advertises 250 nits. But this is 324 nits. That's awesome. And the contrast ratio is actually 1,020 to 1. Okay, so the weakness of this display is definitely in the color gamut range being only 63% of Adobe RGB. That's definitely below what is ideal. When you compare this to most of the other budget systems out here, this display is better. Now the question is, it's better because of this brightness. This makes the display, I think, much more competitive against the Lenovo Lock, because that's rated for 350 nits. So this puts this display in the same ballpark of display quality as the Lenovo Lock. Also, this is a 16:9 aspect ratio display. Look at that, 1920 by 1080p resolution. That explains why we got the bottom chin, just like I kind of pointed out at the beginning. 98 of the sRGB color gamut, 78 and 80% of the P3 color gamuts. So this is probably around like mid to high 80s for Adobe and P3 color gamut, which is really good actually for a display around this price point. Under brightness and contrast, 391 nits. That's phenomenal. Our contrast is really not that good though at 960 to 1. That's only about average in terms of contrast. But for brightness, this is far above average for your brightness in laptops around the $1,000 mark. So the display quality of this Neo 16 is certainly above average. That's our ambient noise in the room, 43 decibels. That's with the fan going. Like, we're in eco mode right now. The laptop has been running for about a minute in the test. 43 decibels is like 1 decibel louder now that these fans are running, and I can barely hear the fans running. We're getting 81 watts, right around 80 watts of power to the GPU. Our GPU boost clock is at 23 70, 24, 45, 24, 60. We're utilizing the GPU 100%, 66 degrees for our GPU temp. That's really good. Our CPU is only sipping 15 watts approximately. Our GPU is doing 80 watts, but really good temps between the CPU and the GPU right now. Our wrist rest on the left side is completely cool as well. Our WASD keys are just slightly warm. Center of the keyboard, slightly warm. Along the top of the display, it's definitely warm. I'd say 44.5 decibels in eco mode. Switching over to balanced mode now. Our boost clock is doing 2,500 approximately. Our GPU temperatures have gone up 70 degrees from about 64 to about 70 degrees. And that happened fairly quickly. I can also hear that the fans ramped up a little bit louder. Not much. The fans ramped up to about 48 decibels, and then they ramped back down into like the 45, 46-ish decibel range. I'm guessing it's because like a temperature of something up here went over 75 degrees or something, and then that triggered the fans to ramp up just a little bit. Performance mode on auto fans. Notice that we're doing 95 watts of power to the GPU, so we got an additional 5 watts of performance into the GPU. Our boost clock is now hitting 2580 for the GPU boost, which is, it's a little bit better, about 80 megahertz more. Our temperatures have also gone down because they were kind of in the low 70s to mid 70s, between 70 and 75. Now our GPU temp is down to 64. It dropped like 10 degrees while at the same time going up in performance. I do really like that, obviously, but the louder fans are louder. So if you're after minimal fan noise and still almost as much performance, like it's not going to be that much of a performance difference here. If you want a quiet all around system, you're still getting really good temps here. So 56.5 decibels approximately for the performance mode on auto fans. So maximum fans sounds like it's the same. Like it went up 100 RPM, I think. So there is Time Spy running in the background right now already, and we are in quiet mode. Wow. Quiet mode is doing quite well. So you can see that quiet mode is doing 80 watts of power, 70 degrees on the GPU right now, 63 on the CPU, with 15 watts of power to that CPU. We have a good amount of wattage, plus our GPU is running at 2520. So our GPU is close to like the peak boost clocks for the stock clocks without any overclocking. It's able to run this whole thing at the same time not overheating, and I cannot hear the fans right now at all. We're gonna go ahead and see if there's any increase with the decibel meter, but I don't think there will be in quiet mode. So that is already very impressive thermally speaking. Yeah, I do not hear these fans at all. Very impressive thermals for this Neo 16. Oh, I hear the fans kicking up a little bit now. Boosting our decibels above 41.5 up to like 42 to 43 decibels in quiet mode. Very quiet fans overall. Very nice. Good job, Acer. You did a great job, at least on your quiet fans. Let's move to balanced mode. All right, so we are now doing 95, 93 watts. So over 90 watts, we've bumped our watts, and our clock speed is still staying above 2500. Really didn't change much in terms of actual clock speed. I can hear the fans ramping up quite a bit more now, but realistically, they're not even getting that loud here in boost mode. And our temperatures have also remained right in line in the mid 70s, mid 60s for the CPU. So balanced mode hitting 46.5, 47 decibels. Very nice overall balance of fan noise and temperatures and performance. Let's move to performance mode. Notice the CPU is really cranking a lot more wattage, 33, 28, 29 watts to the CPU. That's boosting our CPU performance levels, but at the same time, it's also raising our temperatures on the CPU, and it's making the whole overall system fans run a little bit heavier, noisier. So performance mode basically is allowing that CPU to run at a higher level, which is going to be very useful in a lot of games. So 49.3 decibels, so not quite 50 decibels, even in performance mode. Let's switch it into turbo mode. So we are now doing 2655 on the GPU clock. So it automatically overclocked the GPU by about 120 clock speed on the core, and looks like 200 on the video memory as well. So now we're doing 8201 on the video memory. So that's definitely going to help performance at least a little bit, a few percentage points. Notice that our CPU is still doing the 30 watts. So the primary difference I'm seeing between turbo fan and performance fans is just that it comes with an overclock. Basically, the GPU is then overclocked, and the fans are also louder. I think our GPU temperature has gone down a little bit. We were doing like 75, I think. Now we're in the low 70s. So the overall wattage really hasn't gone up because the RTX 4050 doesn't really need much more than 90, 95 watts. Turbo mode right now is basically just applying an overclock, and at the same time, it is basically lowering our temperatures by increasing the fan noise. But our temperatures were not that bad to begin with. 53.8 decibels for our audio on the turbo fan mode. Let's see here. Is there a max fan option? Fan control. We're going to set to max. Are you ready? 63, 64 decibels on max fans is extraordinarily loud for a laptop. That is almost as loud as the GT77 from MSI, but it's in a, this is in a much smaller laptop chassis size. It's impressive that they can get this loud and move this much air. Let's check out the thermals now that we're on max fans. 64 degrees now on the GPU, 63 degrees, 57 on the CPU. Just like literally, like these are like desktop level temperatures now, but in a laptop form factor, which is just awesome to see. All right, so we're doing 2600 megahertz, 2595, 88, 89 watts, 54 degrees, 56 degrees on the CPU, GPU. Those are super cool GPU, CPU, excellent thermals all around so far. So 73 degrees on the CPU here, 4.5 gigahertz, 64 watts of power there at the end, 8,603, 9,300. That's pretty good. We're in turbofan mode. We should have a small overclock applied. There you can see it. We are doing 2670 for our GPU boost clock. 54 degrees on the GPU, 41 degrees on the CPU. It is absurdly good temps. Our wattage is basically right around 90 watts of usage. Now we're only doing 90 watts. I'm pretty sure this thing would go to a higher wattage level if it needed to, but we're maxing that boost clock at 2670 with the default turbo OC on this RTX 4050, and it is just cruising. It's doing no problems, keeping the temperatures at under 60 degrees, 58 degrees right now on the GPU, 49 on the CPU, 50 on the CPU. Okay, so 8,935 for our graphics score. That is really good for an RTX 4050, right up there with the best of them for all the RTX 4050s. 14,456 is really, really good for an i5 CPU. Value comparison at $12.49, this thing's not very good. When it was on sale and I bought it for $8.99, I think that's a very good deal. We've got great thermals here. We've got a great gaming experience overall and a fairly portable package with a fairly high quality display, 324 nits brightness, over 1020:1 contrast ratio, not super high color gamut on the display, so not as good for video editors, photoshoppers, all of that. Keyboard feels good. The trackpad's only plastic, so not as premium. Speakers were surprisingly good. The acoustics in fan modes were also very good. For speakers, I gave them a rating of 8.0, which is pretty good overall for a more budgety laptop. The ports on this are good, but not great. There's no SD card slot. There's only 4 USB-As. There's a network port. There's an HDMI 2.1, which is a high quality HDMI out. The ports on this are more limited than what you typically get in a 16-inch laptop. I would expect 1 to 2 more ports on this, so a little bit deduction from there. Now, the fan noise itself was only like 44 and a half decibels in quiet mode, and it still has pretty good performance. In balanced mode on auto, it was like 46 to 48 decibels, also still very quiet. And the speakers are loud enough to play great games, great gameplay. When you put the speakers up to max, you're gonna hear the gameplay. The fans won't be very intrusive when in balanced mode on auto fan. So the Omen 17 has a lot better ports. The Omen 17 had some more premium options like better quality displays. And I think the biggest thing about the Omen 17, obviously you can have much higher, you can get a 4080 or 4090 in that machine. This version of the Omen 16, you can't do that. That said, I mean, in terms of feel and aesthetic and premiumness, I feel like they're about in the same tier of category in terms of premium feel. And in that sense, I think this is much better than the competition. The design of the chassis itself feels like a fairly nice-ish laptop. Now it's all plastic, so it's nothing special for build quality. But for rigidity, I think the Omen 16 feels pretty dang rigid, except for the right wrist rest. When we did the flex test, the right wrist rest was a bit more bendy. In general, though, I think the design itself, like that's probably the big thing that stands out to me about the Omen 16. Like, I really like this design. It comes across as a more premium laptop than it actually is, like the price tag would indicate at $899. And I like the layout of the actual keyboard itself. And the backlight is very bright and very vibrant. Obviously, it's only one color though, at least in this mode. The display itself is going to be good for esports, but in Warzone 2, we just didn't have enough cores and enough performance, CPU performance to push higher frame rate gaming. So we're only getting about 60 FPS, still very good gameplay, but it's just not as good as what you'd ideally want when you're buying a brand new laptop. That was probably the weakest game out of all the games we tested in terms of esports compatibility. Very high frames in most esports are going to be achievable on this Omen 16. Our AAA games played great. We had great FPS and temperatures in basically everything. Very good performance. If you're after 1080p gaming, this Omen 16 is going to provide a great 1080p gaming experience that's going to be tough. It's not going to be tough to beat. There's a lot of laptops out there that are very competitive with this. The big thing that where this thing could be beat by a number of other laptops is going to be display quality, and then just number of cores in the CPU. In particular, is an area of weakness on this Omen 16. Only 4 performance cores and 4 E cores is a big downside, because a lot of the newer games that are going to come out, I think, are going to want to be able to use more than 4 cores. For performance cores. Of course, for multi-core rendering, things like video editing, they're going to obviously be able to use lots of cores as well. Depending on what applications you use, this may not be the ideal or best budget option. That's my thoughts on the Omen 16. Is it worth it at $899? Yes, it is absolutely worth it at $899, but it does have some weaknesses, primarily the display's color gamut. And number 2, the number of cores that it has is just not as competitive. Value comparison, this laptop versus the competition. Arguably the best temperatures when under max fans of any of the 4050, 4060 laptops that we've tested. The Strix G16 was right up there with it, very closely matching the temperatures, but I would say this was just a little bit better temperature-wise. In terms of value, this guy is costing more than the Lenovo Lock. It's costing more than the Nitro 5 series. It's costing more than some of the HP Omen 16. When there's on sale, like this thing at $1199 is a bit of a premium price for an RTX 4050. But you do get 16 gigs of fast RAM. You do get a much brighter display. 400 nits, or we measured 391 nits of brightness on the display. And it's a fairly high color gamut display. It's a 16:10 aspect ratio display, if that's important to you. This guy really delivers value in the sense that it's optimized well, it's got excellent thermals, and the display is awesome. It's one of the better displays that you can possibly get in this price segment. And it's very important to note that the display upgrade may be worth at least $100 in value compared to the competition, especially the MSI laptops that have a terrible display. But even compared to the Asus Strix G16, which only like a 300 nit display, this guy's 100 nits brighter. That's noticeable. That's going to be noticeable and make this laptop, I think, have a little more value to it. Quality control, this thing is high quality, but it's a lot of plastic. It's kind of a plasticky feel to the laptop. Maybe it's hard, honestly, it's hard to tell if this is plastic or metal, but I think this is plastic. Build quality on this is not as good as like the Strix G16 or Zephyrus G16, but it's close. It's a little better than the cheapest laptops out there. The keyboard and mouse are good, not great. Plastic touchpad, doesn't slide as smoothly, has decent click. Definitely more of a budgety build in terms of keyboard and trackpad, but the layout of the keyboard is good. The backlighting is good. You got 4-zone RGB backlighting. It's very nice. I it'll work well for typing, and it's got nice functionality with volume, pause, play. The home and delete keys, page up, page down, those are on the number pad. Those are not ideally placed. If you need to press home and end a lot, or page up, page down, that might be a drawback here. Everything is backlit, including the secondary functions on the keys, which I do like that. That's a thumbs up. That's something the Strix G16 does not have. The Strix G16 backlighting is a bit more wishy-washy in terms of quality of backlighting. The webcam was meh. Was not as bad. It's not the worst quality webcam, but it was not the best. Speakers were some of the worst we have tested. I have tested all year long. The bass was muddled. The mids, not that amazing, and the overall volume not that loud. It'll work. It'll work just fine though. Like, it's kind of like your average gaming laptop from, like, you know, more budgety gaming laptop speakers. Overall, I give the speakers like a 6 out of 10 rating. Not super loud, not super high quality. Not the kind of thing I would be like, yeah, I can't wait to pump up the bass, you know, play my music on this and fill my room with audio. Like, my phone would have better speakers than this. My iPhone 14 has better speakers than this, for sure. So just give you an example. It's going to be good for Photoshop. It's going to be good for video, good enough for video editing. The biggest problem I have with the display is that I don't know if G-Sync isn't working properly, or maybe the display, there's just a decent amount of ghosting happening on this display. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a delayed response time is the issue because of the new 16:10 panel options and the higher brightness. I was noticing ghosting in almost every game we played, at least a little bit. I just checked the Windows display resolution and advanced settings, and we were set to 60 Hertz on the response rate. That's why we were getting kind of the ghosting jagginess. Now that I go to 165, I think if I were to play games, we should have perfect response rate. Fan noise testing with decimal meter. If you set this thing to quiet or balanced mode, it is juicy. It is so quiet and good performance with good temperatures still. 2 giant thumbs up for fan noise with thermals being combined together. If you set this to balance mode or quiet mode, you're going to have good performance in games and a very quiet all-around system, which I think a lot of people are looking for these days. I just wish the speaker system was a great pair to that, because if you have low fan noise but mediocre speakers, it's still harder to enjoy the speaker quality though. Cinebench R23, only 14,000. That is a bit low. You know, a lot of laptops in the $1,200 to $1,400 range are doing 18 to 20,000 for their Cinebench R23 scores. And I think this laptop could get there if you raise the power limit to 140 watts using Intel XTU, because we were seeing insane levels of power of 144 watts being sustained in this i5 processor, which is just so crazy. 6 P cores, 8 E cores, 14 overall cores, 20 threads in this processor, which is crazy for an i5 processor because it's an HX processor. This is so much better now that we are in 165 Hertz refresh rate on the display. Yes, it was the 60 Hertz response rate. That was the reason why we were running into a little ghosting. This is perfect for esports now, in my opinion. No issues whatsoever in the esports department. And really good temperatures all around. In all of these games, especially at max fans. Now, if you're not at max fans, we were still getting pretty good performance, but you know, the performance noticeably went down, degraded. That if you want to run this thing in quiet mode, you can, but I would probably just put it in balanced mode where the fans are just a little bit audible and you're still getting like 80 to 90% of the performance in that mode. If you really want to take performance to the next level, set it to balanced mode and then undervolt and overclock the GPU. I showed how to do that in the Zephyrus G14 undervolting overclocking guide I did a couple days ago, or like about 5 or 6 days ago. No stuttering in any of the games today. The 1% lows in every single game we tested was good, which I cannot say that about all the RTX 4050 laptops I have tested. There's been some that have struggled in Cyberpunk, for example, or in Hogwarts. And this laptop, for some reason, did really well in all of them. With this laptop, there's almost nothing that I can complain about in terms of gaming performance at 1920 by 1200 resolution on ultra settings. In all the games we tested, it was just a great all-around experience. If you spend more money, you'll get a little bit more performance. Yes, you get a 4060, you get a 4070, you go up to a 4080, 4090, you'll just be cranking the FPS like overkill at 1200p resolution. If you want to go to QHD resolution, that's when I really recommend an upgrade to like a higher tier GPU for sure. Now, a 4060, 4070 could be worth the upgrade if it's only $150 to $200, but clearly the RTX 4050 in this Neo 16 is tuned right and is performing well. All the drivers have come together to give a phenomenal gaming experience for the money. Even at $1,200, I'm just thinking this system is optimized, great display. The main downsides with this machine compared to something like the Zephyrus G16, this thing is chunkier. It's bigger than the G16. If you compare this to the Strix G16, the Strix G16 is just cooler looking and more premium looking with the RGB implementation and a glass touchpad on both of those laptops. The plastic touchpad really is a bummer, in my opinion, if you're after a more premium experience. Can I recommend the Acer Predator Helios Neo 16? Yes, absolutely. At $1,200, given the display quality and how well optimized the system is, I think I can recommend it at the full $1,200 price point. Even when compared to the competition out there, there are other laptops with 4060s for $1,200, and most likely you're going to get more FPS out of those laptops. But those laptops probably don't have as nice of a display and probably aren't as optimized thermally speaking. Not going to run as cool as this thing, but they'll probably have better touchpad and they'll probably have better speakers, maybe even a better webcam. So those are your trade-offs you're getting with the Neo 16. I think at $1,200, it's an okay deal. You can definitely buy it and not feel bad about it. $1,100 if it goes on sale, it's just a really great deal. At $1,000, it's just going to be a really, really great deal. The ports on this being 2 Thunderbolt 4s, 3 USB-As, a micro SD card slot. I mean, this thing's got a lot of ports, and they're high-quality ports as well. They did not skimp on the ports on this thing. The Acer Predator Helios Neo 16, 2 giant thumbs up. Just wait for a sale if you want to get the best deal possible. Otherwise, it's still a pretty good deal at $11.99. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.